Civilization or Barbarism, an Authentic Anthropology by Dr. Cheikh and Diop. Spartan life was a perpetual preparation for war. The equals were haunted by the fear of Helot revolts throughout Messenia, which they tried in vain to reduce in number by cowardly assassinations, institutionalized as educational principles of Dorian youth. Life was no longer anything but perpetual torment, and inhumane measures imposed on the entire society did not prevent the frequency of Helot revolts. Sparta was thus progressively to decline. For if the city state in general was no longer viable, that of Sparta was, because of its political foundations, the most vulnerable of all. Spartan collectivism was not proletarian, and we should not be mistaken about its nature, which was lordly. We need only underline the irony of the history and fate. These individualistic nomads cherishing freedom above all else, it seems, were condemned to lose even the memory of it, due to the mere fact that the foundations on which they chose to build a state that would guarantee them that freedom were non viable and unsound. The Spartan state controlled even the wearing of beards and might dictate the type of feelings that citizen must display in, in, in exceptional circumstances. After the disaster inflicted on it by the city of Thebes in Boeotia at Leuctra in 371 BCE, Sparta ordered the reversal of feelings. Women whose sons had died in battle had to smile and show joy, whereas those whose children had escaped death were to be sad and to weep, and so it was done. It should be pointed out that the surrounding communities that Sparta annexed were not completely formed cities with their own gods and institutional apparatuses. Otherwise, annexation would not even have been thinkable. The conquered city would have been destroyed, its inhabitants either sold or dispersed, or it would have become an ally in what are incorrectly called leagues in modern vocabulary. The Peloponnesian League, whereas its time it was referred to as Sparta, and her allies, the Athenian League, made up of Athens in 150 out of a total of 1,500 city states scattered haphazardly, sometimes separated by enemy states, and the Boeotian League, with Thebes at its head. However, in the 6th century, Sparta had become the principal military force of Greece and was able, with the support of Persian gold, to conquer, force, and dislocate the Athenian League. These leagues were not even the beginning of a political unification as we understand that concept today. The Amphixians are only religious associations whose member cities together exploit the sanctuary of a divinity and share the revenues among themselves. Fustel de Collagen has shown that the idea of real integration of several cities in the setting of a centralized state governed by one law was absolutely alien to the Greek mentality and religion until the triumph of the universalist philosophy that came from abroad. Theirs were emperor and fragile coalitions against an interior enemy, Sparta and her allies against Athens and hers, or the Boeotian League that inflicted on Sparta the defeat of Leuctra, which allowed the liberation of the Helot people and began the decline of the Spartan state, which would fall apart in the 3rd century BCE during the Civil War. Sparta had never wanted to extend citizenship to foreigners, who, as a result, had no reason to sacrifice themselves for her survival. Furthermore, corruption and greed ended up taking over the ranks of the equals. Social inequalities were introduced. Spartan citizens lost their plots of land and consequently their rights as citizens. Sparta had never known an artistic flowering comparable to that of Athens of the 5th and 4th centuries. The artists who built her monuments were almost all foreigners. Bathcles of Magnesia directed the works of the throne of Apollo, and Amyclae, her ceramics, cannot compare with either those of Attica or even those of Corinth. Let us insist on the fact that the term slave, often applied to the conquered Helots, who still remained on their own national land, is improper. More appropriately, they were people dominated and colonized momentarily, so to speak, in their own motherland. These people were neither uprooted nor dispersed. Their culture was intact. They did not lose their national pride and their unceasing revolts, which would end by overcoming the descendants of the Dorian conquerors. Prove it. There were 2 great revolts corresponding to what are called the First and the Second Wars of Messenia, homeland of the Helot people. The last one lasted for 17 years. It was a veritable war of national liberation, momentarily lost. Sparta was compelled to transform the state into a truly entrenched camp, constantly on alert. Sparta was therefore not liberated by slaves in the strict sense of the term, but the uprising of the autochthons. And we'll stop right there, continue back with civilization or barbarism. I'm Uriel. Hi, sorry.